All right, everybody. Oh boy, oh boy. We've got some good news coming out of the White House. Joe Based Biden is unveiling some new based policy. I bet you guys did not see this one coming. This is a White House website fact sheet. President Biden's cap on the cost of insulin could benefit millions of Americans in all 50 states. As part of President Biden's historic Inflation Reduction Act, nearly 4 million seniors on Medicare with diabetes started to see their insulin costs capped at $35 per month this past January, saving some seniors hundreds of dollars for a month's supply. But in his State of the Union, President Biden made clear that his life-saving benefit should apply to everyone, or this life-saving benefit should apply to everyone, not just Medicare beneficiaries. This week, Eli Lilly, the largest manufacturer of insulin in the United States, is lowering their prices and meeting that call. Eli Lilly announced they are lowering the cost of insulin by 70% and capping what patients pay out of pocket for insulin at $35. This action, driven by the momentum from the Inflation Reduction Act, could benefit millions of Americans with diabetes in all 50 states and U.S. territories. The president continues to call on Congress to finish the job and cap costs at $35 for all Americans. This would be unfathomably fucking based. Obviously, you see a lot of conservative, like, Nazgul types, like, virtue signal about why doesn't Biden and the Democrats cap insulin? Well, now they're trying to do it. And I've seen nobody talking about how Biden is trying to do this, and he's facing political resistance from the right. I've seen no one talking about this. The below data breaks down how many adults are living with diabetes in each state, highlighting the cumulative number of adults that could experience lower insulin costs from the Inflation Reduction Act's insulin cost cap for seniors, and industry follow-on actions. And data shows that these cost-saving measures will disproportionately impact communities of color, as Black, Hispanic, and American Indian/Alaskan Native adults have higher rates of diabetes in the United States than white Americans. So it would also have that positive impact too, capping insulin. Additional information on how many seniors in each state are already benefiting from the president's historic actions are available here from the Department of Health and Human Services. The percentage of adults aged 18 years or older with diagnosed diabetes by racial or ethnic group, United States 2018 to 2019. American Indian or Alaska Native, 14.5%, Hispanic, 11.8%, non-Hispanic Asian, 9.5%, non-Hispanic Black, 12.1%, and non-Hispanic White, 7.4%. Percentage of adults 18 or older with diagnosed diabetes in Alabama is 12.7%. You can literally go down this chart here. I can show screen so you guys can see it. We can go down this chart here and see that it breaks down by state the percentage of adults 18 or older that have been diagnosed with diabetes, and then the total flat number along with it. This is millions upon millions upon millions of Americans that would benefit from this insulin price cap. That is extraordinary. For those that don't know how, like, groundbreakingly big this is if Biden can get this passed, the prices of insulin have been one of the biggest issues that have been talked about and focused on by progressives and lefties, and mostly leftists in this country, for a long time. Here, I'm sure we can bring up a good video on it. Insulin price cap. This is from NBC News. I'm sure I won't get copyright struck by this. I'm sure we can handle the copyright power of NBC News now. Let's see what happens.
Original now with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been watching. And tonight, it's about type 1 diabetes, because over a century ago today, somebody got the first ever successful insulin injection. Before that, type 1 diabetes was a death sentence. Patients who had it would often only survive a few weeks or months after diagnosis.
Yeah, it's not survivable without insulin. And not to mention, by the way, without insurance, currently, insulin can be hundreds of dollars, oftentimes is hundreds of dollars. By the way, 11.6% in some of these states, is as high as you see some of these rates of diabetes for adults, that is a big percentage of voters in those states that is worth winning over. For sure, for sure.
Very different from today, where researchers say across the country, about 16% of diabetics actually skip insulin doses because of how expensive they are. If patients have little or no health insurance, it can cost up to $1,000 a month for insulin. More recently, Democratic legislators have been celebrating a cap on the price of insulin, but some critics say it doesn't go far enough. Zinkley Essamore has the story.
I think there are different types of insulin. Some are more potent or advanced. I don't really know the science behind it. And this is covering some of the cheaper, like, basic level insulin. So this is going to save lives and all, but it's definitely, like, the shoddiest version of this policy that could exist, but it's something. It's like an unprecedented step forward.
Laura Marston has type 1 diabetes.
I have to pay for this or I die in about 2 days.
She was diagnosed as a teenager.
At 14, to all of a sudden be told you have to give yourself injections, and it's very overwhelming.
And cost has always been a concern.
My first vial was $25, and now the exact same vial is $300.
She's one of over 1,600,000 adults.
$300 for a vial of shit you need to save your life. It's downright dystopian. You know, looking back at it, it kind of reminds me how much media must be inspired, like that I enjoyed when I was younger and just didn't get the references, is inspired by just really on-the-nose references to real-life events. Like, for example, there's a zombie series I really like, a zombie video game series I really like called Dead Rising. And part of the story is that, like, the zombie virus has existed in modern America for quite some time, and there's been a partial cure invented for it. And if you've been bitten, the only way to not turn and die is to get every 24 hours and eventually every 48 hours, and I think eventually weekly, injections of this stuff called Zombrex. And it's expensive, is not covered by insurance. People do insane shit to make money to afford their prescription or their loved ones' prescriptions. And I cannot imagine a world where that's not a reference to the struggle of type 1 diabetics in this country and the insane cost of this life-saving medication.
It's in the U.S. living with type 1 diabetes,
or really anything like this,
an autoimmune disorder where a person's pancreas cannot make insulin. Insulin prices in the U.S. remain the highest in the world, on average costing $98.70.
You guys know I used to live literally like less than an hour away from the border of the U.S. and Mexico, and there was a town not too far away from Palm Springs where people would go to, like, cross over the border, and right on the other side are dentists, surgeons, like pharmacies, like every medical thing you could imagine, just right there on the other side of the border fence, all just 80% cheaper than they would be on the other side. Tons of Americans just cross over, that just park on one side, walk over the border, go and get some medical work done, walk right back over, and save thousands.
According to one study, prompting patients to make dangerous decisions. In 2021, nearly 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. either skipped, delayed, or used less insulin than was needed to save money, according to an Annals of Internal Medicine study based on a CDC survey authored by physician Dr. Adam Gaffney.
Not taking insulin can precipitate a medical emergency.
And the risks are higher for Black insulin users, more likely to ration insulin, according to the survey. Insurance coverage matters too.
Also, people with private and health insurance also had higher rates than those with, say, Medicaid or Medicare.
As of January 2023, insulin costs are capped at $35 for Medicare recipients due to the inflation.
Currently, if you have government insurance, you already have cheaper insulin, but we're talking about, like, this is meant to expand the cap for all people paying out of pocket for insulin to $35 just across the board. It would be huge.
Reduction Act. But the price cap only applies to those with Medicare, excluding more than 21 million patients. Democrats initially proposed an insulin cap for people with private insurance, but that provision was removed in August 2022 by Senate Republicans. The bill's co-sponsor, Senator Tammy Baldwin, a Democrat.
It's what frustrates me so much, and I'm not trying to, like, drama bait here, I promise, but it's just the one person who comes to mind as a good example, Shoe on Head, with like her super weird, like fluctuating between hyper weird pseudo support for Republicans, but also on top of that, like virtue signaling literally about how insulin is too expensive. Like, I see people do that kind of shit. They talk about how the Republicans and the Democrats are just as bad as each other, but then they use examples of issues, or they use issues as an example that the Democrats are actively making unprecedented steps to solve. Like, nothing like this, as far as I'm aware, has ever been attempted by a Democrat president to this level of seriousness. This is a big W for Biden. There's just no denying it.
Told NBC News in part, quote, no one should go bankrupt just to get the medication they need to live a healthy life. Dr. Gaffney points to pharmaceutical companies for the rising costs.
So I think we need to move beyond a system of copays and deductibles to a system where people can get the care they need, regardless of their ability to pay.
NBC News reached out to the 3 largest manufacturers of insulin.
Eli Lilly, I don't know what this one is, and Novo Nordisk. Yeah, so those are like the big 3 big pharma companies. It's actually so fucking despicable that production of insulin and sale of insulin is literally lasered down to 3 companies that have a monopoly on this life-saving medication. Patents are fucking hell. Patents are not something I'm a big fan of when it comes to medicine. I almost think patents should be banned when it comes to medications and medicine. It feels like it's just abused. The concept of being able to have a monopoly on a medication is just abused so much.
Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi. The companies responding in separate statements, saying in part, anyone paying more than $35 a month for Lilly insulin can call the Lilly Diabetes Solution Center. In 2022, approximately 63,000 patients in the U.S. received free insulins. And despite the rhetoric about skyrocketing insulin prices, the net price of insulin has fallen for 8 consecutive years, making our insulin significantly less expensive for insurance plans. For Laura, she says the new cap is a start, but leaves out users like herself.
You know, I'm lucky. I have insurance. I'm very privileged. I still hoard the dregs of my insulin vials in my tiny Washington, D.C. fridge.
Laura, still wary of the day she may run out of insulin.
It's a terrifying
Zingle
thought.
is joining us now. So Zingle, you know, you talked about the number of people
who
delay or skip or don't take enough insulin. That clearly and obviously has medical consequences, right?
Yeah, Hallie, and it has big ones, right? Because skipping doses, first of all, is alarming because of the number of people that we're hearing who are rationing, right? 1 in 5 U.S. adults with diabetes ration insulin, and they say they do that to save money. But Dr. Gaffney mentioned to me that there can be chronic effects of skipping doses, like long-term damage of the retina, your eye, damage to your kidneys, diabetic coma, or in the worst cases, Hallie, death. So the stakes are incredibly high, and this is not something people should take lightly.
It's really tragic that this has been the state of things for so long, that so many people have had to, like, live in fear that one day they're not going to have the ability to get their insulin, and any moment their life could come crashing down and possibly end. It's actually fucking terrifying, and I really, really hope Biden, A, gets the credit for how based this policy is, and B, I really hope that this actually goes through, and that there is enough willpower to push it, and that the Republicans don't block it like they have previous attempts to do this in the past. We'll see. Only time can tell. Based Biden, though. Biden W, undisputedly.